Big changes are underway for the U.S. education system. President Donald Trump's administration has taken steps to dismantle the Department of Education, shifting educational oversight to state and local governments. In February 2025, Trump appointed Linda McMahon as the Secretary of Education, tasking her with leading this transition. Just a month later, on March 20th, Trump signed an executive order to shut down the department entirely. According to the administration, the goal is to return control of education to states and local communities, reducing federal oversight. The executive order outlines a plan to redistribute the department's functions across various federal agencies. The Small Business Administration would take over the federal student loan portfolio, which is valued at approximately $1.6 trillion. The Department of Health and Human Services would oversee programs under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. The National Center for Education Statistics would be moved under the Census Bureau. The move has sparked intense debate and legal challenges. Educators and advocacy groups, including the American Federation of Teachers and the American Association of University Professors, have filed lawsuits challenging the legality of dismantling the department without congressional approval. Critics, including Connecticut Democrat Representative Johanna Hayes and Senator Richard Blumenthal, argue that the plan is irresponsible and could disproportionately harm low-income and minority students who rely on federal programs like Pell Grants and the Title I funding. Despite the backlash, Secretary McMahon has defended the administration's plan, stating that the goal is not to defund education but to improve efficiency by reallocating responsibilities. She assures that critical programs like Pell Grants and funding for students with disabilities will continue, though they may be managed under different agencies. The future of the Department of Education remains uncertain. The executive order faces legal obstacles and still requires congressional approval. The outcome of this battle will determine the federal government's role in education and the fate of programs impacting millions of students worldwide. What do you think about those changes? Should education governance be left to the states, or does federal oversight play a vital role?
Do you fear that the Department of Education is getting cut? Why?
I do fear it's getting cut. I think it's not a good decision for our government to base education decisions solely on the states. I think it should be a federal decision, and all states should be taught the same education because that limits other students from different states to getting a higher level.
Do you believe shutting down the Department of Education will impact your ability to go to college, and why?
Since I am going to college this year, I personally don't think it will impact me in the moment, but probably my second year of college, some of my federal loans and aid might be cut a little short because of this that's going on.
What do you think the biggest challenges would be with getting a new education system?
I think the biggest challenges will be that a lot of the underclassmen and people that are going into high school, even middle school, are going to have a loss of education, which I think is really crucial to our development as humans, to know what happened in our past and to get certain just educational needs, because as a society we should all know what's up.
Should the federal government ensure equal education for all students?
Yes, I don't think it should be decided to the states. I think everyone should have a fair and equal education and have everything available to them.
Say your name and occupation to the Kimberly.
Oh, yes. Corey Weber, and I am Harlan's librarian.
What is your stance on the Department of Education getting shut down? Do you think it's good or bad?
I feel like having the Department of Education shut down would be a detriment to schools and to students across our nation, because the Department of Education does a lot of work for special education students who have 504s. It also helps to provide scholarships for students going to college, and I feel like everything that it does supports having an educated populace, and I think that it's very important for us to have an educated citizens in our world.
Do you fear that the Department of Education is getting cut? Why?
While I do worry about the current administration's decision to try to cut the Department of Education, I do know that our government has certain systems in place that hopefully will do the right things and take it through the court systems and realize that cutting the Department of Education is not a presidential power but a congressional power, and that our Congress members who are elected will make the right choices to reinstate the Department of Education.
How do you think the potential loss of federal funding would impact this?
I feel like if federal funding is cut, especially for the Department of Education, it's going to be really hard for our schools to upkeep our special education departments. I think programs like library programs, art programs, music programs, all of those types of things will also suffer impact. And unfortunately, I think that's going to impact the students, because when you have a bare bones school, you don't get the best education, a well-rounded education, as a school that has all of those beautiful programs and that is able to fund all types of students that are able to be there.
How do you plan to adapt your teaching methods to a new system, if you do?
Yes.
Because you do also, not only are you a librarian, you do also teach some classes here.
Yes, absolutely. So as a librarian, I think that I will work to support our teachers even more so, because I feel like we're going to have bigger class sizes and teachers are going to need that extra support in their teaching. And then for library programs and things like that, if we get funding cut for those, then we'll have to do a little bit more work of maybe asking the community to step in, and also make sure that people realize that a library is valuable. Unfortunately, when funding gets cut, in a lot of places, libraries are the first things to go. And people don't realize that libraries do more than just books. They teach research, they supplement teachers, they have programming for students. And all of that, I think, is very valuable to an education. So I think being vocal about how libraries support our campus and our district is going to be a big part of making sure that our programming and our teaching is still valued.
What do you think the biggest challenges would be with getting a new education system?
I think the biggest challenges with having a pared down education system, which would happen if the Department of Education does, is also the fact that we are in Texas, and Texas right now is also trying to pass vouchers, and that would also defund schools to an even deeper level. And so we're going to end up seeing higher class sizes, probably in the 30s and 40s. We will also see less programming, less money to go into students and schools. So educational programs like band or art, or even the classroom educational pieces, all of the funding there would be cut. So we would have less supplies to have to work with more students. Also less teachers, less safety. All of those types of things are the things that go when schools cut funding, or when the district or state or nation cut our funding.
Do you believe that if states begin to make decisions for education, that will be unbiased or not?
Right now, the state makes a lot of decisions for our education, and depending on the state that we live in, I think that you will see some bias in there. One of the problems that we face in Texas is that our education is already at the lowest spectrum of funding compared to other states in our nation. And so in that way, we already face a little bit of a biased situation. If states were given all of the control of education funding, then I think that we're going to see a lot of mandates, but not the money to be able to fund those mandates, which makes it hard for students, it makes it hard for teachers. And if that happens, I think we're going to see even less people going into teaching, and it's going to end up being a crisis. Especially now, because we're already facing a teacher shortage in our state. And with the voucher systems that our governor and the Republican Party want to pass, I think that that would also be a detriment, and I think it would end up being a little bit biased.
Hello, my name is Brianne Green, and I am a theater arts teacher.
What is your stance on the Department of Education getting shut down? Do you think it's good or bad?
I have a lot of strong opinions. I try not to share my political opinions with my students or publicly, but as a educator of 25 years, I've learned so much about our state education system and our federal education system, and I don't think it's good to completely shut it down. Are there things that can be fixed? 100%. Are there always room for improvement? Absolutely. But I think just closing it down is not in the best interest of our student.
Do you fear that the Department of Education is getting cut? Why?
Well, yes, because they said so. And like I said before, I just think there are other options that would be better for educators and students and families and everybody that utilizes the public school system in America instead of just eliminating it.
How do you think the potential loss of federal funding would impact the school?
I think it will be drastic and dramatic, and I think it is unnecessary to be so abrupt with those changes. And I see firsthand as a parent and a teacher how funds are spent, and it's not on lavish things, it's on thread and all sorts of neat things that we use to help teach kids, rulers, markers. So I just think that cutting funds is only going to hurt our kids.
How do you plan to adapt your teaching methods to a new system if you do?
As always, teachers are awesome, and I will continue to do more with less and do everything I can to support kids and also spend my own money so that kids can learn the way I think is best for them.
What do you think the biggest challenges would be with getting a new education system?
I think just the buy-in, and believe me, teachers from all around the world, especially I know in America, I have friends all around the United States, change is hard and change is difficult to implement, and so I think there'll be pushback, but they're already trying to make changes all the time, whether it's merit pay or change schedules or cut electives. So they're always trying to make changes all the time, so making such a drastic change will just be challenging.
Do you believe that if states begin to make the decisions for education, that it will be unbiased or not?
Well, states already do have their choice in education. All states receive federal funding. However, each state has their own curriculum and own requirements. For example, when I taught in Washington, we had the WASL, which was the Washington Assessment of Student Learning. Here it's the STAR in Texas. We have TEKS, they had ELERS. It was the same thing in a different package. And so states already have the privilege of doing what's best for what they think is best for kids in their state. So I don't know what the unbiased necessarily means. It's more about receiving federal funding for different needs and making sure that there is like a state test, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing either. Like, I want to make sure that my kids are learning, and I want to make sure that the teachers doing their job. So having state assessment is really important to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, but I don't think it's the be-all end-all of education. But federal funding and state funding come in different ways, and I believe that the cost of having great schools is going to further burden the taxpayers, because families, as much as they can, are willing to give more so that their kids have more in the school system. So if they're not getting that from here, they're going to be trying to get it elsewhere, and then that's going to hurt the pockets of parents. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much.